Today, we're diving into the future of our economy, but we're going to look at it through a really interesting lens provided by economist Iwao Nakatani. He basically argues that there are these two secret operating principles driving our world, and the clash between them, well, that could define our entire century.
I mean, we all feel it, right? There's this low-level anxiety about where everything's headed. You've got AI exploding onto the scene, the gap between the rich and poor getting wider, and our planet is just, under so much strain. It's easy to feel like we're on a speeding train with no idea where the tracks lead.
But what if the key to making sense of it all, and maybe even finding a better path, lies in a kind of hidden code that's been running our global system this whole time? Nakatani's big idea is that capitalism has been driven by one of two secret logics. And if we can understand them, we can start to make a real choice about our future.
So let's start with the logic that's been in the driver's seat for centuries, the one that got us here. It's called the logic of exclusion.
Okay, so what does that actually mean? It's the core engine of what we think of as traditional capitalism. The idea is pretty simple, actually. To make a profit, you define something as being outside of you or your company. You make it an external other. And once it's an other, well, you can use it, you can exploit it for its resources, and then you can just discard it without paying the full price.
And this logic has popped up all through history. I mean, think about colonialism. Indigenous people were labeled barbaric so their lands and resources could be taken. Or look at how we've treated the environment for centuries, like it's just some free, infinite dumping ground. And looking ahead, there's a very real danger that AI could do the same thing to people, creating a whole new useless class that's just excluded from the economy.
Now here's where it gets really fascinating. The justification for all this exclusion kept changing. The historian Emanuel Wallerstein pointed out that back in the 16th century, the excuse was religion. Civilization has to correct barbarism. Fast forward to the 19th century, and it becomes Orientalism, this pseudo-intellectual argument that non-Western cultures couldn't possibly modernize on their own. And then in the 20th century, it's scientific universalism, the idea that our version of science and free markets is the only way for anyone to progress. The excuses changed, but that underlying logic of exclusion, it stayed exactly the same.
So here's the turning point. That old model, it's breaking down. The engine that powered centuries of growth it's hit a massive wall.
And why is that? Well, because we're basically running out of things to exclude. The geographic frontiers, they're gone. There are no new continents to easily exploit. And the environment is pushing back hard with things like climate change, making it pretty clear it's not some infinite external resource. We've hit the physical limits of an exclusionary world.
And this is showing up in the economy in some really stark ways. Just look at Japan. It's had near zero interest rates for more than 20 years. Now, think about that for a second. If money is basically free to borrow, and there were still tons of profitable external projects out there to invest in, you'd see money flooding into them. The fact that it's not, that's a huge red flag that the whole profit-seeking engine is stalling out.
Okay, so if the logic of exclusion is on its last legs, what's next? Well, Nakatani says we need a massive paradigm shift. We need to move to a logic of inclusion.
This is a complete 180. Instead of seeing the world as a bunch of separate things to use, the logic of inclusion sees one giant interconnected system. Nature isn't just out there, it's the system we are all living in. Society isn't just a marketplace, it's the community we're part of. The goal isn't to extract value from an other anymore, it's to create value within the whole.
And this difference in logic really comes from some very deep-seated worldviews. The traditional Western model is pretty hierarchical, right? You've got God at the top, then man who has dominion over nature below. It's a pyramid. By contrast, the traditional Japanese worldview with its Shinto and Buddhist influences is way more interconnected. The kami, or gods, humans, and nature, they all exist on a more level playing field. It's all about relationships and continuity, not a strict top-down hierarchy.
The philosopher Moriyama Masao dug even deeper, and he traced this all the way back to the very idea of creation. In the West, the main concept is to make, tsukuru. A creator, the subject, is totally separate from the object being created. But in the Japanese tradition, it's closer to the idea of to become, naru. Things don't just get made, they emerge, they grow, they transform. There isn't that super sharp line between the maker and the made. It implies a world of flow and connection, not just separation.
So you might be thinking, okay, that's some nice philosophy, but Nakatani argues that Japan actually provides a kind of cultural blueprint for what this logic of inclusion can look like in the real world.
You can see this logic just woven into the culture. When Buddhism arrived in Japan, it wasn't a case of one religion trying to stamp out the other. Instead, they blended together. There's this really powerful Buddhist idea that all things, even grass and trees, have the potential for enlightenment. That's the ultimate form of inclusion. And it even extends to business, where the company was traditionally seen not just as a machine for making money, but as a community responsible for its people.
Let me give you a fantastic real-world example of this. Toray Industries, a big materials company, was facing a major crisis. Now, the old exclusionary logic would say, cut costs, lay off those expensive engineers. But they did the exact opposite. They included their engineers in the long-term vision, trusting them with research that wasn't going to pay off right away. And the result? They invented carbon fiber, a revolutionary material that secured their future for decades to come. That right there is the competitive power of inclusion.
In his book *Sapiens*, Yuval Noah Harari makes this famous argument that human society is built on shared fictions, stories we all just agree to believe in, like money or nations. The logic of exclusion has been an incredibly powerful story for a very long time. But now, we have a chance to adopt a new story, a new fiction, the logic of inclusion. We get to choose the story we tell ourselves about how the world actually works.
And that really brings us to the final and most important question of all. What path do we choose from here?
Because look, this isn't just about tweaking a business model anymore. Choosing between exclusion and inclusion, that's a decision about our fundamental values. Do we see the world as a resource to be carved up and used, or do we see it as a single, interconnected whole that we have to take care of if we want to survive? The answer to that is going to define civilization.
And this is where Harari leaves us with this incredible mind-bending thought. In an age where we can basically engineer anything, the biggest question isn't just about what we want to become, it's about what we want to want. What should our desires even be? Should we want a future built on exclusion and separation, or one built on inclusion and connection? That's the question that every single one of us has to answer.